Dr. Marcos, a highly skilled black physician, begins his night shift at a bustling city hospital. As the evening progresses, he attends to a variety of patients, handling each case with the utmost care and professionalism. The hospital is lively, with doctors and nurses moving swiftly through the halls, attending to emergencies and routine checkups. The atmosphere is tense but organized, reflecting the high stakes of the medical field. Suddenly, the sound of an ambulance approaching alerts the staff to a critical situation. The paramedics rush in with a patient who has been involved in a severe car accident. The gravity of the situation is apparent. The patient is in critical condition and requires immediate surgery. Dr. Marcos, who is on call, is quickly briefed on the patient's condition. The urgency of the situation leaves no room for hesitation. As Marcos prepares for the operation, he is informed that the patient is a police officer. Despite the high-profile nature of the case, Marcos remains focused on his role as a physician. He puts on his surgical gown and gloves, mentally preparing for the intense procedure ahead. The team of nurses and surgical assistants gathers around, each member performing their duties with precision. The operating room is filled with a sense of urgency and concentration. The surgery begins, and Marcos works meticulously, using all his skill and experience to stabilize the patient. The procedure is complex, with numerous critical moments where quick decisions are required. Marcos remains calm and collected, guiding his team through each step. The atmosphere in the operating room is tense, with every member of the team focused on the task at hand. The gravity of the situation is underscored by the seriousness of the injury and the importance of the patient's recovery. After several hours of intense work, Marcos successfully completes the surgery. The patient, the police officer, is stable but remains in critical condition. The team cleans up and prepares for the next steps in the recovery process. Marcos, though exhausted, feels a sense of accomplishment. He has done everything in his power to save the life of the officer. As he leaves the operating room, he reflects on the gravity of the situation and the impact of his work. The hospital continues to buzz with activity, but the successful surgery brings a moment of relief. Marcos takes a brief moment to himself, reflecting on the night's events. The stress and pressure of the job are momentarily eased by the knowledge that he has made a difference. He prepares to check on the officer's progress and to continue his duties for the rest of the shift. As the night wears on, Marcos remains vigilant, aware that there may be more emergencies to handle. He moves through the hospital with a sense of purpose, ready to face whatever challenges the rest of the night may bring. The memory of the officer's condition lingers in his mind, and he hopes for a positive outcome. The night shift continues, with Marcos fully committed to his role as a physician and to the well-being of his patients. The next morning, the police officer Ricardo regains consciousness in the hospital room. He is groggy and disoriented, his body still recovering from the traumatic accident. The room is filled with soft beeps and the murmur of hospital staff attending to their duties. Ricardo's mind is focused on one thing: finding out who performed the surgery that saved his life. When Dr. Marcos enters the room for his routine checkup, Ricardo's eyes widen with recognition. The sight of Marcos triggers a flood of memories from a painful episode in Ricardo's past. Marcos is the very man Ricardo had unjustly assaulted during a police stop years earlier. The incident had been a dark moment in Ricardo's career, driven by prejudice and a lapse in judgment. The realization hits Ricardo hard, creating a knot of guilt and discomfort in his chest. Marcos greets Ricardo with a professional but warm demeanor, asking how he is feeling and providing an update on his condition. Ricardo tries to mask his anxiety, responding to Marcos's questions with brief and polite answers. He struggles to keep his emotions in check, trying to process the overwhelming realization that the man who had saved his life is the same person he had wronged. Throughout the day, Ricardo's discomfort grows. He avoids direct eye contact with Marcos, trying to hide his internal turmoil. The weight of his past actions bears heavily on him as he reflects on the injustice he had done to Marcos. The guilt eats at him, making it difficult for him to focus on anything other than the looming confrontation he knows he must face. Marcos continues his rounds, checking on Ricardo's progress and providing updates on his recovery. Despite the professional nature of their interactions, there is an underlying tension that neither man can fully address. Marcos is unaware of Ricardo's internal struggle, and Ricardo is hesitant to bring up the past, fearing the possible repercussions. As the day progresses, Ricardo becomes more determined to confront his past actions. He seeks advice from a trusted colleague about how to address the situation with Marcos. The conversation provides him with some clarity and courage, but he remains unsure of how to approach the delicate matter of his apology. In the evening, Ricardo decides that he must speak to Marcos. He requests a private conversation with the doctor, hoping to find the right moment and words to express his remorse. The anticipation of this conversation is nerve-wracking for both men. Ricardo knows that he must confront the wrongs of his past, while Marcos is prepared to handle whatever comes his way with his usual professionalism. As Marcos enters the room for their scheduled meeting, Ricardo feels a mix of anxiety and resolve. He knows that this conversation will be pivotal in addressing the issues that have been haunting him for years. With a deep breath, Ricardo prepares to face the man whose life he had once shattered, now the one who had saved him from a dire fate. As the evening approaches, Ricardo steels himself for the conversation with Dr. Marcos. The hospital room feels colder now, with the weight of what Ricardo needs to confess hanging heavily in the air. Marcos enters the room, his demeanor professional yet warm, as always. He checks Ricardo's vitals and engages in casual conversation, but the tension between them is palpable. Ricardo, struggling to maintain composure, waits for the right moment to speak. Finally, Ricardo decides to break the silence. He asks Marcos if they can talk privately, away from the hospital room. Marcos, sensing the gravity of the request, agrees and follows Ricardo to a quiet corner of the hospital. They sit down in a small waiting area, where Ricardo begins to speak, his voice trembling slightly. Ricardo starts by acknowledging the critical role Marcos played in saving his life. He expresses his deep gratitude and admiration for Marcos's skills and dedication. Marcos listens attentively, nodding in acknowledgement, but his curiosity about the underlying tension grows. Ricardo's hands shake as he continues, the confession he is about to make feeling like an insurmountable burden. With a deep breath, Ricardo begins to recount the painful events from the past. He describes the incident where, during a police stop, he had acted out of prejudice and aggression, targeting Marcos without cause. The memory of the unjust treatment and the false accusations he had made weighs heavily on him as he speaks. Marcos's expression remains neutral, but his eyes reveal a flicker of recognition as the details of the past are shared. Ricardo admits that he had wrongfully assaulted Marcos, and that his actions were fueled by racism and a misuse of power. He explains how the incident had haunted him for years, and how it had influenced his reflections on his career and personal growth. Marcos listens, processing the confession with a mixture of surprise and somber understanding. He feels a pang of anger and hurt, but also a sense of validation as the truth is laid bare. As Ricardo continues, he apologizes profusely for the pain and suffering he caused. He explains that he has spent years trying to make amends and become a better person, but he recognizes that he cannot undo the harm he has done. He asks for forgiveness, hoping that acknowledging his wrongs might be a step towards redemption. Marcos, still processing the confession, remains silent for a moment. The emotions he experiences are complex: anger, pain, and a deep sense of betrayal, mixed with a reluctant empathy for Ricardo's struggle. He reflects on the impact of the past incident on his life and career, realizing how deeply it has affected him. After a pause, Marcos finally speaks. He acknowledges Ricardo's apology, but also expresses the difficulty of reconciling the past with the present. He shares his own feelings about the incident and the long-lasting effects it had on him. The conversation is emotional, with both men confronting their shared history and the scars it has left behind. The dialogue concludes with an agreement to continue the process of healing and understanding. Ricardo leaves the conversation with a mix of relief and uncertainty, knowing that he has faced a significant chapter of his past, but unsure of what the future holds. Marcos, meanwhile, reflects on the conversation and its implications for his own journey towards forgiveness and closure. As the days pass, Ricardo's internal struggle continues to weigh heavily on him. He is plagued by guilt and remorse, reflecting on the unjust treatment he inflicted on Dr. Marcos years ago. His physical recovery from the accident is slow, but the emotional burden of his past actions is even more challenging. He spends his time in the hospital room thinking deeply about the conversation he had with Marcos and the implications of his confession. Dr. Marcos resumes his rounds, visiting Ricardo regularly to monitor his progress. During these visits, he maintains a professional demeanor but remains mindful of the recent conversation. Marcos is still processing the gravity of Ricardo's confession and the impact it has had on him. He is grappling with a mix of emotions, including anger, disappointment, and a reluctant sense of understanding. Ricardo, meanwhile, is determined to make amends. He decides to take proactive steps to address the past wrongs, seeking ways to contribute positively and help those in need. He reaches out to community organizations and initiatives focused on justice and equality, hoping to use his position as a police officer to promote positive change. Despite his efforts, he finds it difficult to fully escape the shadow of his past actions. In a twist of fate, a local news outlet picks up the story of Ricardo's accident and his subsequent recovery. The media attention brings to light the history of the incident between Ricardo and Marcos. The public reaction is mixed, with some expressing sympathy for Ricardo's attempt at redemption, while others are critical of his past behavior. The media coverage adds another layer of complexity to Ricardo's situation, forcing him to confront public scrutiny. Marcos, aware of the media frenzy, tries to stay out of the limelight. He focuses on his work and personal life, attempting to maintain a sense of normalcy amid the turmoil. However, he is deeply affected by the ongoing media coverage, which often brings up painful memories of the past. He finds solace in his professional duties and the support of his colleagues, who offer encouragement and understanding. As Ricardo's condition improves, he begins to prepare for his discharge from the hospital. He remains committed to his path of redemption, planning to continue his work with community organizations and advocacy groups. His interactions with Marcos become more subdued, marked by a mutual understanding of the shared history they must navigate. Ricardo's focus shifts to making a meaningful impact in the community, aiming to demonstrate his commitment to change. Marcos, in turn, reflects on the difficult journey he has undergone since the incident. He contemplates the complexities of forgiveness and the possibility of moving forward. While he is still grappling with his emotions, he acknowledges the steps Ricardo has taken toward redemption and recognizes the potential for personal growth in both their lives. As Ricardo prepares to leave the hospital, he feels a sense of both relief and uncertainty. The path to redemption is far from clear, and he knows that his journey is only beginning. Marcos, too, faces his own challenges, working through the emotional fallout of their shared history. Both men are left to navigate the aftermath of their encounter, striving to find a path toward healing and reconciliation. As Ricardo approaches his discharge from the hospital, he continues to grapple with the repercussions of his past actions. His commitment to making amends drives him to engage more deeply with community outreach programs and initiatives focused on social justice. He meets with local leaders and activists to discuss ways he can contribute to positive change, using his position as a police officer to advocate for reforms and support marginalized communities. Despite his efforts, the media coverage surrounding his case remains intense. Reporters frequently approach Ricardo, seeking his comments on his past actions and his plans for the future. The scrutiny is relentless, and Ricardo finds himself under constant pressure to prove his sincerity. He participates in interviews and public forums, attempting to communicate his remorse and dedication to transformation. Each interaction is emotionally taxing, but Ricardo remains determined to demonstrate his commitment to change. Dr. Marcos, meanwhile, continues his work at the hospital, focusing on his patients and his responsibilities. He remains distant from the media attention surrounding Ricardo, choosing instead to concentrate on his professional duties. However, the media frenzy and the public discussions about his past impact his sense of normalcy. Marcos finds himself reflecting on the broader implications of Ricardo's actions and his own journey toward forgiveness. The hospital staff, aware of the situation, provides support to both men. Marcos's colleagues offer words of encouragement, helping him navigate the emotional complexities of the situation. Similarly, Ricardo's fellow officers and community members express their support for his efforts to make amends. The solidarity from those around them provides a sense of comfort and helps them both cope with the public scrutiny. As Ricardo's discharge day arrives, he prepares to leave the hospital with a mix of relief and apprehension. He has made significant strides in his recovery and is eager to continue his work in the community. However, the road ahead remains uncertain. He knows that his journey toward redemption is ongoing and that he must continue to demonstrate his commitment to positive change. Marcos, on the other hand, faces his own emotional challenges as he processes the aftermath of the encounter with Ricardo. He reflects on the difficult path of forgiveness and the complexities of reconciling with his past. The experience has left a lasting impact on him, and he is determined to continue his work with renewed purpose and empathy. As Ricardo leaves the hospital, he is met with a mixture of support and skepticism from the public. The media continues to cover his story, highlighting his efforts to make amends while also scrutinizing his past. Ricardo remains focused on his mission to contribute positively to society, understanding that actions speak louder than words. Marcos returns to his routine, but the events of the past weeks linger in his mind. He continues to reflect on the lessons learned and the growth experienced. Both men are left to navigate their respective paths, striving to find meaning and purpose in the aftermath of their shared history. The journey of redemption and forgiveness continues, with each man facing his own challenges and opportunities for growth. As weeks turn into months, Ricardo's efforts to rebuild his life and career become increasingly publicized. He becomes a prominent figure in local community outreach programs, working closely with organizations that advocate for social justice and police reform. His commitment to these causes is visible in his participation in community events, public speaking engagements, and advocacy campaigns. Despite his sincere efforts, not everyone is convinced of Ricardo's transformation. Some community members remain skeptical, questioning whether his commitment to change is genuine or merely a response to the media attention. Ricardo faces criticism from various quarters, with some accusing him of using his public redemption to overshadow his past wrongs. The scrutiny takes a toll on him, and he finds himself struggling to balance his desire to make a difference with the ongoing challenges of public perception. Dr. Marcos, meanwhile, has continued to focus on his work at the hospital. His interactions with colleagues and patients are marked by a renewed sense of empathy and dedication. The experience with Ricardo has influenced Marcos's approach to patient care, fostering a deeper understanding of the complexities of human behavior and the importance of forgiveness. Marcos also starts engaging in community efforts, using his platform to support initiatives that address health disparities and advocate for equal treatment in healthcare. He becomes involved in local programs that aim to bridge gaps in medical access and support marginalized communities. The connection between his personal experiences and professional work drives his involvement, and he finds a sense of fulfillment in contributing to positive change. As Ricardo's public efforts continue, he faces a critical turning point. A high-profile case involving police misconduct comes to light, stirring widespread outrage and calls for reform. Ricardo is invited to speak at a major rally, advocating for police accountability. This opportunity is both a significant platform for him to voice his commitment to change and a potential risk, as his past actions are scrutinized in the context of the current events. At the rally, Ricardo delivers a heartfelt speech, acknowledging his past mistakes and emphasizing the importance of accountability and reform. He speaks about his personal journey and the lessons he has learned, striving to connect with the audience on an emotional level. The response to his speech is mixed, with some applauding his courage and others remaining critical of his past actions. Dr. Marcos watches the rally from afar, reflecting on the complex interplay between personal redemption and public perception. He admires Ricardo's courage, but remains wary of the challenges that come with seeking forgiveness in the public eye. Marcos's own involvement in community work feels more relevant than ever, as he sees the impact of these efforts on both individual lives and broader societal issues. Ricardo continues to face challenges as he strives to prove his dedication to change. He remains committed to his work, participating in ongoing community initiatives and seeking ways to address systemic issues within the police force. Despite the obstacles, he finds support in the friendships and alliances he has built along the way. As the months pass, both Ricardo and Marcos come to terms with the evolving nature of their respective journeys. Ricardo's path to redemption is fraught with difficulties, but he remains resolute in his mission to make a positive impact. Marcos, too, finds renewed purpose in his work, driven by the experiences that have shaped his understanding of forgiveness and growth. The two men, though following separate paths, remain connected by their shared history and the ongoing quest for personal and societal change. Their journeys illustrate the complexities of redemption, forgiveness, and the struggle to reconcile past actions with a commitment to positive transformation. As the story progresses, Ricardo's commitment to social justice and reform begins to yield tangible results. His involvement in community outreach and police reform initiatives starts to show signs of meaningful impact. He helps to implement new policies within the police force that promote transparency and accountability. These changes are met with both praise and resistance, reflecting the contentious nature of reform. Ricardo's efforts are recognized by several community organizations and local leaders. He receives awards and public acknowledgement for his dedication to improving police practices and supporting marginalized communities. These accolades, however, do little to quell the ongoing criticism from those who remain skeptical of his motives. Ricardo continues to face a public divided between admiration and skepticism. Dr. Marcos, meanwhile, is making strides in his own professional and personal journey. His involvement in healthcare advocacy leads to significant improvements in medical access for underserved communities. Marcos's efforts contribute to raising awareness about health disparities and encouraging reforms within the healthcare system. His work garners support from colleagues and community members, enhancing his reputation as a compassionate and effective advocate. The media coverage of both Ricardo and Marcos continues, but their stories begin to take on new dimensions. Ricardo's public appearances and speeches are scrutinized for signs of genuine change, while Marcos's involvement in advocacy work highlights his commitment to addressing systemic issues in healthcare. Both men find themselves at the center of ongoing public debates, their actions and intentions analyzed from multiple perspectives. Ricardo's journey takes a dramatic turn when he is invited to speak at a national conference on police reform. This is a significant opportunity for him to address a broader audience and share his experiences and insights on the importance of reform. The conference attracts media attention and a diverse group of participants, including policymakers, activists, and community leaders. During his keynote speech, Ricardo candidly discusses his past mistakes and the lessons he has learned. He emphasizes the need for systemic change and the importance of holding individuals and institutions accountable. His speech is met with a mixture of applause and criticism, reflecting the polarized views on his journey and the broader issue of police reform. As Ricardo continues to navigate the complexities of his public role, he begins to feel the strain of constantly being in the spotlight. The pressure to maintain his commitment to reform while addressing ongoing criticism becomes overwhelming. He reaches out to trusted friends and mentors for support, seeking guidance on how to balance his personal and professional responsibilities. Marcos, witnessing Ricardo's struggles, reflects on his own experiences and the challenges of public scrutiny. He reaches out to Ricardo, offering support and understanding. Their conversations provide both men with a sense of solidarity and mutual respect, reinforcing their shared commitment to making a difference despite the obstacles they face. The relationship between Ricardo and Marcos evolves from one of tension to mutual support. They begin to collaborate on joint initiatives, combining their efforts to address social justice and healthcare issues. Their partnership becomes a symbol of reconciliation and cooperation, demonstrating the possibility of positive change even in the face of a troubled past. As the story progresses, both men continue to face personal and public challenges. Ricardo's journey toward redemption remains ongoing, marked by a mix of triumphs and setbacks. Marcos's work in healthcare advocacy gains momentum, contributing to meaningful improvements in medical access and equity. Their combined efforts illustrate the power of resilience and the impact of dedicated individuals working toward a common goal. In the final stages of their stories, both Ricardo and Marcos look toward the future with a renewed sense of purpose. They continue their respective missions, driven by a commitment to making lasting changes in their communities. The experiences they have shared and the lessons they have learned shape their paths, leaving a lasting impact on both their lives and the lives of those they serve. Months later, Ricardo and Marcos find themselves in a reflective phase, considering the outcomes of their individual and collective efforts. The impact of their work has become evident, yet both men grapple with the residual effects of their past and the ongoing challenges of their public roles. Ricardo has faced several significant hurdles as he works to maintain the momentum of his reform efforts. Despite implementing new policies and practices, he encounters resistance from within the police force and from segments of the public. The tension between promoting reform and navigating entrenched institutional norms proves to be a continual struggle. The spotlight on his actions remains intense, and he often finds himself questioning whether his efforts are making a substantial difference or merely serving as a public relations exercise. In his personal life, Ricardo experiences a mixture of support and skepticism from those around him. Friends and family express pride in his commitment to change, but some remain wary, questioning whether his transformation is genuine. This dichotomy leaves Ricardo feeling isolated at times, struggling to reconcile the admiration of some with the doubts of others. Dr. Marcos, meanwhile, has achieved significant milestones in his advocacy work. His initiatives have led to improved healthcare access for marginalized communities, and he has garnered respect from his peers and the public. However, the emotional toll of his past interactions with Ricardo lingers. Marcos finds himself reflecting on the complexities of forgiveness and the ongoing impact of the past on his present. As Ricardo and Marcos continue their separate but intertwined journeys, they decide to collaborate on a new project aimed at addressing both police reform and healthcare disparities. They create a joint initiative that combines their expertise and experiences, aiming to bridge gaps between social justice and healthcare access. The project gains traction and support from various community organizations, signaling a promising step toward addressing the interconnected issues they are passionate about. Throughout the development of this project, Ricardo and Marcos face moments of tension and disagreement. The collaboration forces them to confront their past grievances and navigate the complexities of their relationship. Despite these challenges, their mutual respect and shared commitment to their causes help them overcome obstacles and work toward common goals. As the project progresses, Ricardo and Marcos host public forums and workshops to engage with community members and gather feedback. The forums provide a platform for open dialogue about the issues they are addressing, fostering a sense of community involvement and ownership. The positive response from participants reinforces their belief in the potential for change and the importance of continued advocacy. Both men experience personal growth through this collaborative effort. Ricardo learns to navigate the complexities of public scrutiny with greater resilience, while Marcos finds a renewed sense of purpose in his advocacy work. Their partnership becomes a testament to the possibility of reconciliation and progress, demonstrating the impact of working together to address multifaceted societal issues. In the final stages of the story, Ricardo and Marcos reflect on the journey they have undertaken and the lessons they have learned. They acknowledge the ongoing nature of their work and the need for continued dedication to their causes. Their shared experiences have shaped their perspectives and strengthened their resolve to make a meaningful difference. The story concludes with Ricardo and Marcos looking toward the future with optimism and determination. Their individual and collective efforts have left a lasting impact on their communities, illustrating the power of transformation and the importance of addressing complex issues with empathy and commitment.